There we go. Well, listen, it's just great to see you and Phil and Sarah and so many colleagues and former colleagues from Elanco. What a great seminar. In just a moment, I'll introduce our two guests. But I just want to start by saying this is the very candor, the very sincerity, the very level of detail that so many of us had worked so hard to achieve with the pre-summit in Rome. And I would say in many cases we did not get. There was a lot of pre-selected speakers. The predominance was on cuts, pairbacks, eliminations, and yes, we heard the word innovation. I want to give credit where credit's due, but I still cannot find the word trade mentioned. So my kudos to those who have really helped make this happen, and I hope so many around the world will review this because I've been amazed at the candor, the transparency, the open heart, open mind concepts here. And you're to be complimented, both Agri-Pulse and Elanco. Well, I see Ambassador Mitch Fifield there. So let me just make a quick introduction there. I love this guy's background. He is the ambassador from Australia, not to the US in Washington, but to the UN in New York City. So right country, but different location. And his background is fascinating for this particular role he's in. He's a former Australian senator and cabinet minister, 15 years in the Senate. Appointments included deputy leader of the government, manager of government business in the Senate, minister for communications. There's something that's very important for this issue. Minister for the arts. There's always a lot of artistics that go into this kind of thing. But the best, I think, was his time as a reservist in the Australian Army Psychology Corps. So this is a preeminent qualified guy to go work New York in this particular issue. So Ambassador, thank you for being with us. And let me, before I forget, say your team in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere are simply fantastic. I've met many of them.
Well, thank you so much, Ted, for your kind words. And you're quite right. We do have a great team in DC. And thanks also very much to Elanco for inviting me to join this really important event. And thanks also to Ambassador Forster for joining me in this discussion. Well, we're all very well aware that we are 1 week out from the UN Food Systems Summit. And the topic of sustainable food systems is at the top of Australia's agenda. And colleagues of mine, particularly in Rome, have for some time been working hard to ensure that the summit's successful and to ensure that it supports our broader efforts to achieve progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Friends, as the UN has aptly reminded us, everyone, everywhere must take action and work together to transform the way that the world produces, consumes, and thinks about food. I mean, it's a good thing to think about these issues. So I'm very pleased to join you here today so that we might reflect on the important contribution of sustainable livestock and animal industries to equitable food systems and to a healthy future for all. And I just want to make it really, really clear that sustainable livestock and animal industries are an absolutely fundamental part of the story when it comes to delivering better food systems and to ending hunger. It's really a part of the Australian story. It's part of the story of Brazil. It's part of the American story. And in fact, food grown in Australia feeds more than 70 million people each year. And that's more than double our own population. It bears repeating, colleagues, that a strong and a sustainable livestock and animal sector underpinned by open and predictable global trade and international collaboration is central to the 2030 agenda. And it's a key plank of sustainable and resilient food systems in Australia and also around the world. Animal proteins absolutely provide a stable, a consistent and an affordable source of nutrition that so many of us who are on this call rely upon to feed our populations, and it just simply cannot be replaced at scale. Colleagues, friends, sustainable meat products such as those that originate from Australian industry will play a key role in helping to address food insecurity and to combat the effect of COVID-19, the effect that it's had on food systems and people. For our part, Australia is ready to collaborate with partners to secure a path forward for our food systems that is stakeholder driven. And this is really important, that's informed by scientific evidence and also appropriate to national contexts, appropriate to national needs, and appropriate to national priorities. So we do support the Food System Summit goal of delivering more sustainable, productive and resilient agriculture and food systems. And we do want to see the summit outcomes be balanced, be stakeholder driven, informed by science, I say again, and take into national circumstances, take into account national circumstances, I say again, and that are non-prescriptive. Friends, the summit marks the beginning of the process rather than the end point. And Australia hopes that the summit will deliver new opportunities for us to collaborate with our partners to tackle food system challenges in this decade of action. Great to be with you and look forward to the chat.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much. Word had it that you all have a few of those wonderful critters over there, so that makes you preeminently qualified to speak to this. I'll also say it was very, very important that the nexus of you in New York, where this next summit next week will take place, the final and most official summit, is important. To the audience, I'll tell you that we're still waiting for Ambassador Forster, the Brazilian ambassador to Washington, D.C., will join us. And when he does, we'll roll over to him and give him a few options. But let me just start with a few questions to you, Mr. Ambassador, given your experience. And I can only imagine that you've been in great conversation with your farmers, your industry, and a lot of people on this topic. So let's just start. Let's get specific. Why is the UN Food System Summit important to you and to those of you in Australia? You said that you support it. Take a next dive at that, would you?
Certainly. It's important as we approach the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals to look at the practical things that we can do. Sometimes in the context of multilateral bodies, there'll be terrific overarching objectives which give assent to. But what really matters is the extent to which you can identify the practical ways to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and making sure that there's not hunger, that people have good, nutritious meals is important. So I think the Food System Summit, which the Secretary General conceived of, was an effort to make sure that we can identify some of the practical ways of achieving those objectives. For our part in Australia, we're good at sustainable agriculture. We're good at ensuring that we have high quality product that we can export to the world. And we try and tread lightly on the planet as we do so. And our industry is always looking to be more sustainable. Our meat and livestock industry has a target of net zero as an industry by 2030. So we see this as an opportunity to talk about the good things that we do in food production so that we can share those with others. But it's also really important that the outcome of the Food System Summit is one that is based in science and that takes into account national contexts. Now, I think sometimes there can be a tendency, regardless of the forum, for people to have a bit of a sling, take a bit of a shot at what I might call industries of long standing. Now, just because an industry has been around for a while doesn't mean that it's not a good industry. It doesn't mean that it's not an industry that's always looking to improve itself and to be better. And that's why it's just really important in this process that we make clear that there are a range of different sources of protein. It might be aquaculture, it might be fisheries, it might be plant-based, or it might be animal and livestock. But animal and livestock is a critical form of protein. And again, it's something that's hard to replicate at scale. So I guess that's the overarching context in which Australia is involved in the Food System Summit. and how we see it. Just also something that we're seeking to do from Australia's perspective is to help amplify the voice of the Pacific. So we've organised regional dialogues with our Pacific Island colleagues to make sure that the Pacific voice is heard loud and clear as we approach the Food System Summit outcome.
The land down under is live and well. You mentioned a couple things that need some elaboration, and I'm going to put it in a two-part question. First of all, trade was mentioned precious little, if at all, during the pre-summit in Rome. You mentioned, we certainly in the US know well the importance of trade. Contrasting that, I heard it directly from 2 or 3 countries talking about how there needs to be complete reliance on their own productivity, meaning all food for those citizens should come within a 200-kilometer radius, 365 days a year. Now, to those of us that know and love and appreciate trade, I was just aghast. So take that and speak to the importance of trade, not just for the benefit of Australia, but for the benefit of people in the world. That's something you know a little bit about.
Well, Australia is an open trading economy. We export what we do well to the world, and there are things that other parts of the world can do better and more efficiently than we can. So it's important that you have that access to markets, both coming in and going out. And I think it's fair to observe that free trade has probably done more to lift the living standards of people in the world and to address hunger than almost anything else. Humanitarian work is incredibly important. Development work is incredibly important. But ultimately, you're going to feed people through having not just economies that are developing, and we want them to become more developed, but you need to have those channels which trade provides to ensure that you can have truly sustainable sources of food. And fair and open and predictable international agricultural trade absolutely supports the sustainability, the resilience, and the continuing function of the global food system. It contributes to food security and rural development. It's a very important mechanism for rural development is global trade. We keep markets open, and if we keep trade predictable, it enables efficient agricultural food production. It also allows food to get where it's needed, including in times of crisis. That's something that's often forgotten, the importance of getting food to where it's needed in times of crisis. To meet the global food security and nutrition targets and to get back on track to meet the 2030 agenda, we have to keep continuing to work to keep the agricultural trade flows happening. And a few things that we need to have in mind as we think about that, from our perspective, is reforming the World Trade Organization rules on agriculture to promote more efficient agricultural production and trade, and also supporting the critical work of the international standard-setting bodies. And a few important ones like the International Plant Protection Convention, Codex, and the World Organization for Animal Health, to name just a few. But some thoughts on trade, but this forum that we're having today is really, really important because we're giving trade the mention and the focus that it really needs.
Amen. We're going to package that and put that out in a podcast. Let me ask a question. How, to the degree that you can answer it, how is Australia incenting producers to create progress? We're hearing all kinds of methods of doing that. You've heard some of that here if you were a part of this particular session earlier. What's Australia doing to incent producers to do the right thing, to encourage them to do what they normally might do?
Well, it's important that our food sectors keep evolving and adapting. That's important not just for the environment, but also to make sure that our products are competitive and that our products continue to be of high quality. And that's absolutely true of our own sector. Australia has I think a long history of public-private co-investment in agricultural innovation and also supporting international collaboration. I think it's fair to say that innovation is built into the DNA of Australians. There's almost nothing that an Australian farmer or primary producer can't fix with enough wire, strapping it together. But I'm sure that's true of American farmers as well. I guess just some examples on the part of the Australian government. We've got a commitment to supporting the ambition of our agricultural industry to achieve 100 billion in production by 2030. So it's important to have some goals, and that's one of our goals. We have the National Agricultural Innovation Agenda, and that provides national leadership and drives, hopefully, a more coordinated and strategic approach to agricultural innovation. It's a key part of how government's helping industry to deliver that agenda for 2030. And on a global level, we look forward to contributing to the success of the Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, and the US and UAE led initiative, which will launch at COP26, seeks to increase and accelerate global research and development for agriculture and food systems. So we're looking forward to working with a range of global partners to share lessons learned, to overcome the impediments, and hopefully so that we can achieve some greater success together.
Well, thank you for that. Let me just ask one question. You're the most unique person here in the sense that you are based in New York City. I'm going to ask this question then, Ambassador Forster. I see you've joined us, and I really want to give you some time as well. Ambassador Fifield, in Rome, it was a good conference. I think we can say there was a lot of dialogue, but it seemed to be completely missing of modern agriculture and the words of innovation and trade and so forth. And you've clearly stated where Australia is in that. Can you speak to how you and your colleagues will bring forth these key concepts of innovation, of trade and the like? And that is not to negate some of the other concepts like organic and other things. Can you speak to what you anticipate coming in the New York City summit here next week?
So, sorry, Ted, that's to me, not Nestor.
It is to you, Mr. Ambassador Fifield.
Terrific.
And then we'll go to Ambassador Forster if he wants to comment on it. You bet.
Not at all. No, thanks, Ted. Well, I guess what we're expecting from the Food Systems Summit is a statement of action from the UN Secretary General. So that will be a statement in his name. Obviously, his special envoy will have had a significant role in crafting that, and we hope that statement will reflect the deliberations in the summit. We hope that statement will be very much evidence-based, and we hope that statement will take account of national contexts, and that it won't be prescriptive. So that will be the prime product of the process. There'll also be individual country national pathways and coalitions of action. Now, I must confess, I'm not a diplomat. I'm a recovering politician, as you point out, Ted. So sometimes I find phrases such as pathways and coalitions almost a little bit eye-glazing, but we'll just keep that between ourselves. But that's the language of these sorts of forums. So we do need to be used to them. But as I say, what we think the real benefit of the Food Systems Summit is the exchange of experience, the exchange of ideas, that different regions are able to learn lessons of food production from other regions, that there'll be a more fuller appreciation of the importance of trade in addressing hunger, more understanding of the importance of trade in regional development, more understanding of the importance of trade in lifting people's living standards up, and also an appreciation that farmers, primary producers are amongst the most innovative people in the world. And the original or some of the earliest people who have been conserving the environment are primary producers and farmers, because they know that it's through looking after the environment that they work, that they can continue to produce. So these are some of the things that we hope come into focus and that we hope have a greater appreciation through this process. And also that different regions have different needs. That the Pacific region, our region, it's diverse within itself, but it's also very different to other regions. And that's why we need to have a product that's evidence-based, that doesn't seek to be one size fits all, that recognises that there are a range of really good ways to produce good product for people. And we need to embrace these. We need to understand them better. We need to share the knowledge.
Thank you. We'll come back to you in just a second, but just to let us remind you that you have all of our support. I'll just say by way of a little introduction, part of what I've been doing the last 5 months is doing a lot, and I do mean a lot of outreach to countries around the world, 24 to be exact. And this is largely governments, some industry, and it includes your two countries. And I would say that notwithstanding the strong support for the summit and the pre-summit themselves, there is more than just a bit of frustration that it seems to have been a very one-sided effort so far. Again, we're talk of bans and restrictions and curbing, very little, precious little on innovation and trade and the like as there. So with that, let me do a quick introduction of Ambassador Nestor Forster Jr., a good friend of ours here in Washington, D.C. Hello, sir. 2 or 3 things. This guy is very experienced. Mr. Ambassador has spent time in Canada, Costa Rica, and a great deal of time here in our country of the U.S. 3 times, I believe, to the embassy, a couple of consulates, and my goodness, the world that he's worked on include trade negotiations, intellectual property, financial policy, political affairs, international law, administration, and IT. So, and we'll throw agriculture production in there because everybody eats and that gives you credit. So thank you, sir. He has been in this role for some time, initially as the chargé, and in October of 2020 became the ambassador. And we are thrilled that you elected or were allowed to stay, Ambassador. Maybe you can share a few minutes of your own thoughts, because I know you all have been very, very engaged on this UN food systems, including your time, not yours, but Minister Teresa Christina's time in Rome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador McKinney. Ambassador Fifield, good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the tardiness, caused by some technical glitches. But let me just jump right in, Ambassador McKinney. The importance of the Food System Summit for, all agriculture producing countries cannot be exaggerated. And we think we should not miss the larger picture in terms of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, including ending hunger and tackling food insecurity at all levels. And we do think that food systems have a key role in promoting economic growth and fostering social inclusion and protecting the environment while contributing to the 2030 agenda. We think that the summit should acknowledge the central roles played by both technology and productivity growth for agriculture, especially in the achievement of the SDGs. And, we have many challenges to our food system, demanding a holistic and a pragmatic response. And I saw much of that in the responses of Ambassador Fifield in the previous discussion, which I had been hearing but could not join with my video. And I frankly believe that the Brazilian agricultural revolution of the past 50 years can work as a paradigm for what can be achieved globally if we put together technology, sustainability, and free trade. We don't see any role for curbing trade, for introducing restrictions and new trade barriers, especially in the vital sector of agriculture and livestock. So, as you know, as you are aware, Ambassador McKinney, in the past 50 years, Brazil, through research, through science-based agriculture, through a focus on sustainability, we have produced amazing results. Just to mention one thing, between 1976 and 2016, agricultural production in Brazil increased fourfold, while the area under cultivation grew only by a third, only by 33%. Perhaps I should also give an example from animal agriculture.
Yes.
Between 1990 and 2018, Brazilian beef production increased by over 100%, almost 140%, while the area for cattle grazing decreased by 15%. So that has allowed Brazil to expand its planted area while also maintaining a huge part of our territory, about 2/3 of the Brazilian territory under native vegetation. So Brazil is ready to play its role. You mentioned the leadership of Minister Tereza Cristina, our Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, and she has introduced several programs, including the low carbon agriculture program, that what we call in Portuguese ABC program, with the support of the World Bank, which has enabled the expansion of low carbon agriculture models in Brazil, including the integration between crop, forests, and livestock production. And let me just say that Brazil is ready to play its role in sharing its successful experience in developing tropical agriculture, as I said, science-based, sustainable agriculture. And we think that as an end result of the upcoming summit, we should have a push for more cooperation, for freer trade in foodstuffs and agricultural products around the world.
Well, couldn't agree more, and thank you for that. I want to give you just a moment. There's been many accusations, I think mostly unfair, about the Amazon rainforest and grazing, and I know there's been quite the concerted effort by the government of Brazil to refute that or to correct that record. Take a moment here, because sustainability is what a lot of this discussion's about. Go ahead.
Yes, look, there are very serious efforts underway by the Brazilian government in curbing deforestation. And we have, this is a trend, Ambassador McKinney, that, it gets little publicity, but this doesn't start yesterday. It actually started in the year of 2012, so 9 years ago. And it's an upward trend in deforestation that tends to follow economic recoveries and so on. We have recent data just published has shown for the first time a dent in this upward curve as a result of the very stringent enforcement measures undertaken by the Bolsonaro administration. For the first time in Brazil, we used troops from our army, which is allowed under our constitution, to fight illegal deforestation, illegal mining, and activities that harm the environment in the Amazon. This has been done for the past 2 years, and it's starting to pay off. The government, President Bolsonaro, at the Leaders Summit in late April here, convened by President Biden, announced a commitment to double our enforcement budget to fight illegal deforestation. This has been done 2 months ago. We more than double it. It was increasing of 118% to be precise, to be exact. But that's the government effort. On the private sector, we see the industry itself playing a very important role in developing standards to develop traceability of its products and avoid anything that has to do with deforestation in the Amazon. I would top that just with one more information, which is not widely known. Brazil has a forestry code which has different standards for different parts of the country. And in the case of the Amazon region, we have a requirement: any property must preserve, according to law, 80% of its original forest covering, 80%. So, any investment there, you can only develop 20%. Of course, there's an issue of enforcement if you consider that the Amazon is about 8 times the size of the state of Texas. But the commitment is there, both from the government and from the private sector in tackling the whole issue of deforestation.
Thank you. I wanted to give you that opportunity, so I appreciate that. I think, Spencer, I'll come to you. I haven't seen any questions in the Q&A box. So if there are, maybe now is the time for those to come forward. While they might be coming forward, I'll just do a quick summary on a few things that I've observed over these last many months in my many discussions with, well, up to 24 countries. 5 key thoughts. It's been said before, and if we can leave this wonderful event today with a theme, it is that animal agriculture, animal protein, maybe per one of the earlier discussions, we should say high quality animal protein, is a big part of the solution. It is not part of the problem. It is a part of the solution, and that's a very important and different way that we must look at that. I, for one, would love to be a fly on the wall to see if our friends in Europe or the UN decide to tell Africa or Asia Pacific or South America and other countries that they must reduce their protein consumption, their animal protein consumption by 25 or 50%, numbers that I've seen tossed around. So animal agriculture and high quality protein is now and must be a part of the solution. The second, for those that have not read the commitments offered up by the animal protein industry, and I have, global dairy for one, very prominent, global pork, poultry, you know, all of them. It is incredible the commitments that have been made. And with those commitments are some outstanding results that have been occurring positively over the last 10, 20 years. So it's not just begun now because it's politically correct. It has been occurring. And I think a precious little time was given to those incredible commitments because for industry to go out publicly, as I think Jeff Simmons was saying early on, is quite significant. So the commitments by these industries must be read, and I hope that can come out in New York because it didn't nearly enough in Rome. Finally, innovation and trade need more time. We will not feed a world. We will not make advancements on the Sustainable Development Goals if we expect to have a complete reliability on a 200-kilometer radius for all the protein needs of the world's population. There's no way. Trade must come into that, and innovation, I think, has proven Malthus's theory is wrong. The book 1984, proven incorrect, and innovation is the biggest part of that answer and that success. 4, I sure hope that the UN, and I do mean our friends in New York, but I hope you will recognize that you have some incredible talent that seem to have been sidestepped that live in Rome. The folks at FAO, the wonderful folks at World Food Program, and the same for EFAD. I don't know why they were so left out of this entire discussion, because that's why they were created so many decades ago. So I beg of you that as you conclude this pre-summit or this summit next week, let's look to Rome, to the folks that have been doing this for a living. I would consider that, and I'll be a fan. And finally, there are a lot of phrases and terms that have been introduced. And let me just name some of them that I have read time and again. I hope Dr. Jason Clay is on there. One of them that he's correctly, I think, introduced is Codex Planetarius. What is that? It's a concept. And Jason, I have so much respect for you that I hope we can vet that much more thoroughly before we see the world climbing on board, because the same thing was afforded the Codex Alimentarius process in the 1950s. A lot of vetting before everybody signed the dotted line and said, I'm in. We hear about nature positive agriculture. We hear about healthy diets, true cost of food, true value of food, agroecology. There are a lot of people that are forcing people and companies and industries and countries to make decisions on these not well understood phrases. So before we run pell-mell and say yes before we understand what we're getting into, let's have a good vetting of those words and those concepts just as we have today. And I think the world is going to be a much better place, and we might even be able to speak very professionally and courteously to each other as we address these sustainable development goals. And I'll close by saying it's about hunger. We've seen this Christmas tree of the UN Food System Summit have lots of ornaments placed on it. If we forget that it's the hunger piece that's the most important, and there's a lot of ways to achieve that, then we will have missed a great deal of the primary objective. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to look to, I don't think I see questions. So Ambassador Forster, I'll turn to you for any closing comments, and then we'll turn to Ambassador Fifield. The floor is yours, Ambassador Forster.
Thank you so much, Ambassador McKinney. Look, I don't think I could agree more with what you just said. I would just add one more topic. We need more trade. We need open trade. We need to avoid the fads of, certain labels and this or that, which are not science vetted, have not been discussed, have not been scrutinized, as you correctly pointed out. And those end up being, a sort of disguised technical barriers to trade, or disguised, SPS barriers and so on. There's also the question, since we're talking here about the need for freer trade, one issue that remains that has eluded us for many years is the whole question of trade distorting subsidies, including domestic subsidies to livestock and agricultural production. We think that should be part of the discussion as well. Of course, it's a WTO discussion, but as we tackle food systems in a broad and holistic approach, we should bear in mind also the distortionary effects that those have, SPS, technical barriers, subsidies, and so on. But what is perhaps more disturbing are these new trends, which try to, in a way, impose a certain, elite diet on the world, including on developing countries. And that's not a recipe to overcome hunger wherever it occurs. It's a recipe for prolonging it and to deny access to people to basic foodstuffs. The path is clear, and I think Brazil is a showcase for this. We went from a net importer of foodstuffs to, along with the United States, along with Australia, along with other great agricultural producing countries, we have become, we are feeding the world, including in animal protein, in pork, poultry, and beef. And that was due to technology, to science-based agriculture, to developing techniques. I heard Ambassador Fifield mentioning that the need for specificity and taking into account the local cultures and so on. So Brazil did just that over the past half a century in developing a science-based tropical agriculture suited to our climates, our terroirs, etc. With these results that we have there in grains, we are harvesting 3 or 4 crops a year. In livestock, we are increasing the production, tremendously, and reducing the area that's used for animal agriculture. So we see that as the path to go, and count on Brazil to be there, helping provide food security for the world with sustainable, science-based agriculture. Thank you very much, Ambassador McKinney, for the opportunity to join you here today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ambassador Fifield.
Thanks, Jed, and we greatly appreciated your wisdom during this forum. So thanks indeed, and that of Ambassador Forster as well. And Nestor, Ronaldo at your mission in New York is doing a fantastic job, rest assured. But I guess just a few final messages. And I think sometimes the truths that we hold to be self-evident, nevertheless, do need to be repeated and repeated and repeated. And so I would remind, in the context of the World Food System Summit, those who are participating and those who are working on the outcome documents, that farmers, primary producers, care deeply about the land, they care deeply about the environment, and they care deeply about their consumers. I guess that's message one. Message two is that free trade, it's the global arteries of the global food system. And one of the best hunger busters ever discovered is free trade. So I think that's an important second message. And as I think a number of people in this session have said, the outcomes have got to be science-based. The outcomes have got to take account of national context. And we've been working hard here in New York to share that message. Just last week, I had a gathering of 70 UN ambassadors at a function we co-hosted with Meat and Livestock Australia to convey these very messages. So we've been working hard, and our colleagues in DC have been working hard as well. But it's got to be a full court press from here until the conclusion of the summit to make sure that we have a good outcome document that truly reflects the deliberations of the Food System Summit. Thanks indeed.
Thank you both. Ambassador Fifield, we'll be looking to the news media to see if we can see you with the S on your cape. And Ambassador Forster, the same for Minister Teresa Cristina, who I understand will be going there. There was a question here about who will be representing or leading the U.S. delegation, and I don't think that's been released yet. We don't know if it'll be State Department, AID, or USDA, but certainly among those three, I think will be the leadership. The other thing that came through that was very important, we talked a lot about these commitments from all the livestock, animal-related groups. And our friend Eric Mittenthal reminds us that the Protein Pact, and he puts it there in his comments, www.theproteinpact.org is where all those commitments come together for an easier read. And I wanted to cite that as well. I think our time is up. We've gone a little over the 30 minutes. It's been terrific. If we competitors in this global market of animal protein can come together in this kind of a civil conversation, most certainly, I think we can do that others. I think I'm to turn this to Sarah Wyatt now. Sarah, thank you.